We moved camp on this episode to the Karlín Forum to host a podcast with Joe Bonamassa. Joe is one of the most successful blues artists of all time. Joe discusses in great detail what it takes to be a successful artist and how you need to take charge of your career and how self-belief is a huge part of that. It's fair to say in the music industry, Joe Bonamassa is a self-made man. He talks about as a teenager sitting in with Albert Collins, bbking, Buddy Guy, amongst other legendary stars. How Tom Dowd, one of the most famous producers in the world, took him under his wing. He chatted about his lifelong relationship with Roy Wiseman, his manager since the very beginning. Roy's dad, Elliot Wiseman, managed Frank Sinatra, most of the Rat Pack, Liza Minnelli, amongst other superstars. It doesn't get any bigger than that. A great tale at the end of the podcast where Joe was trying to purchase Tommy Bolin's guitar, which ended up in $150,000 being buried in the desert and still hasn't been found to this day. The irrepressible, brilliant Joe Bonamassa. Joe, thank you so much for doing the podcast, man. It's like, we're all thrilled to see you here. It's amazing Karlín Forum in Prague.
Yeah.
Full house tonight.
Yeah, it's been sold out for a long time. And, you know, this tour has been great. I mean, you know, it's been a while since we've been back, 3 years, 4 years. And unfortunately, we had 2 years where we didn't come. And we started touring back here in the UK, Europe, and everything last spring. And then, do you guys want to... Guys. Shh. What the fuck do they think? I mean, seriously, it's like, got any jackhammers? Ready? Clap again. Ready?
One more clap. Joe, amazing to have you here today. This fantastic venue, sold out. You've been in Prague before, though, haven't you?
Yes, we've been here in Prague a few times. The Czech Republic's always been really a good market for me. The last time we were in this building was 2013. And it was, you know, it's a great show. And, you know, I was so glad we were able to come back here and sell it out on a Wednesday. And you know, just the fact that anybody knows who I am it's still mind-boggling to me, you know?
I watched your film last night, which I thought was excellent, by
Guitar
the way.
Man?
Guitar Man.
Yep.
Bought it on Amazon. With
Thank you.
Hard-earned cash. And but I just, you know, funny when I got here today, I thought to myself, like, how's he done it? You know, blues artist, like selling out these major venues. But watching the film, to be honest, it all made perfect sense to me. And it's the teamwork. Mm-hmm. It's like, obviously, you're a central figure of this amazing musician, writes incredible songs, like a seminal major artist. But Roy Wiseman on the business side, your business partner, and Kevin Shirley on the creative side, you had this like holy trinity of fabulousness. And I thought, this is how it works. This is how you become a success, by building a team like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it takes a village. I mean, it's, you know, my manager and I have been together for 32 years. My producer, Kevin Shirley, and I, we've been together now almost 20. We've been working with Mascot here, Ed Van Zyl in Europe. He's been putting our records since 2003. So, I mean, we've had these 20-year relationships, you know, Neil O'Brien from the UK, our agent, the only agent we actually have. He's been there 15, 16 years. And, you know, when you ask an artist, like, it's like, how many artists do you know have been with the same manager for 30 years? I mean, that goes back to old school Hollywood stuff, you know? It's just, Roy and I have had this singular goal. We want to win. We don't want to place or show. And we're equally as interested in the obviously the musical side of it, but we're equally as interested in the marketing side. It's like, well, why do some acts play arenas and why some acts don't? It's the amount of marketing that goes into these shows, you know, and it takes a team of 20 people in our office that puts this all on. It takes 35 people to get this idiot up on stage, you know, and I would be the most narcissistic person in the world if I thought I was the only reason why people come. It's the band, it's the crew, it's the people behind me. There's so many things there's so many inner workings of the organization. And by trial and error, you know, kind of tactics that we've been using or techniques. Tactics are just more of a the negative context, but techniques that we've been used to, that market the music and market the shows. And it works. I mean, this tour we've been playing in arenas, like full. It's been like Post Malone and me. I'm like tonight, Joe Bonamassa. Tomorrow, Post Malone. Last night was Post Malone, and now you're here. It's great. I mean,
and very
the big leagues, you know?
Very well deserved. And I think again the thing that touched me with the movie was the loyalty from Roy and from Kevin, because they were early doors guys. It's not like they came in when you were very successful. I mean, you'd had your ups and downs, and I think at the time when Roy came in, it was, you know, there was a lot of ups and downs, and he stuck by you, and that really, I thought, if you want that success, you need to have that brilliant relationship. I just don't think it can work without it, and I was really moved by the love they have for you.
Yeah, and to be honest,
the belief.
Yeah, and the Tom Dowd was like that with me when before Kevin Shirley got involved.
He took you under his wing.
And yeah, Tom Dowd believed, he saw. I always say he saw a jagged rock in a creek bed that was slightly rolling downhill, and he said if he just keeps rolling downhill, eventually it'll turn into, you know, this diamond in the rough thing. So, I mean, for me, it was more of a, you know, I've been blessed to have really good people that have believed in me over the years, but it's also, it's intrinsically down to how hard you want to work, you know?
Just for some context for the podcasts out there. So Tom Dowd, one of the greatest producers of all time.
Yes.
Worked with everybody from Cream and Clapton and everyone in between. Yeah,
and the Allman Brothers, he produced all the Allman Brothers records, all the Leonard Skinner records, Rod Stewart. And Tom was a living legend, and he produced my first solo album for Sony Music. And I couldn't sing, I couldn't, you know, write, I couldn't play. Things people say about me every day, even now. But to be honest with you, he was very, very encouraging. Going, if you want this bad enough, you know, it was very, very clear to me as a solo artist. My God-given name is Joseph Leonard Bonamassa. That is
a long name.
That's a long name for show business. People would like, why don't you change your name? And I said, I can't do that to my parents. I can't do it to my grandmother and my grandfather. It's like, it would break their heart. So we were starting with some headwinds. It's not like, you know, I wasn't like Max Powers, you know, with a Z at the end, you know. That's a Simpsons joke, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, and it became very clear to Roy and I from the very, very beginning that the business of music, meaning the terrestrial music business, was not going to be a friend or an ally. They just had no interest whatsoever in anything that we were doing, the kind of music we played, the kind of image we had. And this was going from when we couldn't play, sell out the lobby of this place, let alone sell out this place. It was painfully clear. Like Rolling Stone magazine in the United States has never printed the two words Joe and Bonamassa on the same page. Not a single bit of coverage. And this is wow. This is 35 years in the business. This is having the most #1 blues albums in the history of the Billboard charts. This is selling 9 million blues records in a over the course of 20 years when nobody's selling anything. So once you accept that, okay, then just build your own castle, you know? And
if you want to get something done, do it yourself.
You know, I mean, the kind of venues that we play, you know, maybe now they would, but historically when we first went to the Royal Albert Hall or we first went to Red Rocks, you know, no promoter would ever have gone, Joe Bonamassa's not going to do 10,000 seats at Red Rocks. We're like, okay, hold my beer. So and then we promoted we promote all the shows ourselves. And because we were able to identify that nobody, if you are not willing to take a chance on yourself, then why would anybody take a chance on you? And that's a Vince Gill quote. And once I heard him say that, I said, wow, that's really profound. And that's been our mantra that we've lived by for a long time.
So do you feel a little bit of an outsider in that sort of corporate music world? Did you feel like that just was definitely not the place for you to be from an early stage, where you went, this just isn't going to work for me? The lack of control. I mean, I don't want to call you a control freak, but you probably are in some ways, in a good way, as in you want to control everything. Whereas when you give up that control to major labels, it's like, it's a world of pain, isn't it?
It's not, I remember when I was on a major label, okay? And I would get advice from people that are no longer in the music business. So the people that were giving me the most profound advice about how to make it are now selling real estate or in different business ventures. So these were not dyed-in-the-wool career people. But I just remember them going, well, when you come into the office, you have to be really animated and impress the people in the meeting. I said, what do you mean in the meeting? We're having a meeting about something, or a meeting about a meeting. And he's like, yeah, but you gotta be like great in the meeting, because then that gets the team behind you. I'm like, I already got the record deal.
Yeah, sure.
I should be able to walk in with a Red Rocks sweatshirt and some good ideas and not have to be the guy on stage. And when I realized that, every music business function I've ever been to, I feel like it's opposite sides of a magnet. There's just something that isn't, and it's probably my own antisocial behavior, a couple of chips on my shoulders, but generally I don't get on with that kind of phony showbiz cliche, because I'm too pragmatic. I'd rather talk about guitars, or I'd rather talk about Cream records with you and with real people, you know, as opposed to the let's do lunch crowd, you know. It's, you know, or in Nashville, it's y'all come back, or, you know.
I love you as you're.
And then in London, it's cheers, mate. You know, it's like everybody has a. I don't know if you can swear on this thing. You can bleep me out if you want. Every major city has a fuck you, I never want to see you again. You know, LA is like, let's do lunch. New York is like, well, I'll be in touch. And, you know, I mean, everybody has the fuck off. Don't want to hear you again.
So going back to the very beginning, again, doing my due diligence for our chat, and sort of, you know, sitting in with like B.B. King and Albert Collins, you kind of gloss over a little bit, but you don't just sit in with Albert Collins and B.B. King. How did that happen? How did you make that happen?
You know, B.B. asked me after he saw me play. I was asked by a promoter to be there to open up the show for him, and he watched some of my set, and he was like, hey, you want to get up and jam? I'm like, let's do it. Same thing with Albert Collins. He saw me play. I was in one of the opening acts, and they said, hey, you know, it's like when you're at a blues festival and you're probably sitting around backstage as a headliner kind of bored, and your road manager comes to you and says, hey, you know, there's a 12-year-old kid opening up for you. It's like, it becomes like, well, I at least got to go check it out. But, you know, in the same year, I got to sit in with James Cotton. I got to sit in with Albert Collins. I got to sit in with Buddy Guy, B.B. King, John Lee Hooker. That was a year after. I got to Duke Robillard, Ronnie Earl. You know, I got to shake Willie Dixon's hand in Los Angeles. Earl King, I mean, you name it, Larry Davis. And this was all in the scope of between November of 1989 and the spring of 1991. All of that occurred. And I was in and out of school, and I was in and out of these these kind of things where it was a surreal thing. And my parents were very simple people, you know, from upstate New York. They didn't, you know, all of a sudden they had this showbiz kid thrust upon them. You know, major labels were calling the house. You know, they were looking us up in the phone book. You know, my mom worked for the state of New York. My dad at the time delivered paper for a paper company, and then he had a music store. You know, entertainment attorneys were never, it wasn't on our speed dial, you know what I mean? Sure. Next thing you know, and that's when I met my manager when he was 23, I was 13. And he was just getting in the business. His father was in the business. His father, who just turned 85 years old, Elliot Wiseman, he managed Frank Sinatra, Stephen Eady, Don Rickles,
Unbelievable.
Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. all at the same time, among others.
Liza Minnelli, I think.
Liza Minnelli as well. And so they were servicing artists that at that point were in their careers where they were superstar names, but they weren't making commercial records. And so they were trying to pivot the business to where it was more commercial records or whatever. And that's how I met Roy. And we just kind of got along because we were, again, we're like this, we're crazy. People who know us pretty well, I think those guys are nuts, like certifiable nuts. We are, but we're the same kind of crazy. With the same goals.
I saw that in the film. Like, he's got a very quiet demeanor, though.
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
he doesn't.
I've got a bit.
He looked good in the film.
I've got to say, I had a bit of a crush on him after the film. I was like, that guy looks amazing. And also, his kind of this quiet demeanor, and it was a bit Godfather-esque, which I really liked. It was like he just like. It was just so glamorous, you know, him and his dad and Frank Sinatra. I think these are superstar people.
Yeah.
You know, again, looking at your stories, like, you know, the amount of advice he must have been able to get from his dad about building your career and all the mistakes and where all the pitfalls. And again, this stuff just doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, his dad, Elliot, again, who happy birthday. He just turned 85. He is always so complimentary to his son Roy and myself about, because he was there when we were struggling, had nothing, you know. Right now we're at the halfway point. 17 years of famine, 17 years of feast. It took 17 years to get it going.
Amazing. To
the point where it scaled, like there was a real business there. And I hate to sound like I'm on CNBC or Bloomberg, but my best advice I can give to artists is do not shy away from learning business, why businesses work and why businesses don't work. And you don't have to look at it from the entertainment side. Just look at it from a falafel stand. Why does this guy sell more falafels than this guy who's selling the same falafel? Well, it's business acumen, it's marketing, it's location, it's being in the right place at the right time, and then there's some of that dumb luck
and there's drive.
And there's drive, and you have to be driven. You cannot. I work harder now well, I don't know if this will air. If it's airing before Monday, then I'm still 45, but if it's airing after this Monday, I work harder as a 46-year-old guy than I ever did when I was a 26-year-old guy. Because to maintain this and to do this is very, very, very labor intensive, you know? Yeah, I'll do this tour, which is 4.5 weeks, and then I get a month off. It's like, oh, you get a month off. Yeah, but I'm not sitting at home, like, you know, looking at the trees, you know? I mean, there's a lot of work to maintain. Just because I don't have to get up in the morning and put the suit on doesn't mean you're not working. And it's 24/7. It's 7 days a week. You know, I don't even acknowledge Sundays. It's like if there's something important going on, who cares? It's 7 days. It's 24/7 because it's your own business.
So just going on with that point. So, you know, like any great artist, you know, you have to be driven. And in my experience, anyway, working with artists over the years, it's like there's a struggle. Especially with the blues, there's an internal struggle that's going on. I mean, what do you think your internal struggle stroke drive is? What is it that's really, what's the yin and the yang on that, like the struggle and then the challenges, would you say?
The struggle is, after putting out 45 records, is how to keep them fresh. The struggle is how to exacerbate. I'm saying the struggle is not sweating the little things, you know, keeping your eye on the big picture, because if it depends on what mood you're in and stuff like that, and it will exacerbate bad qualities in you, you know. But you know, the drive is inherently in your DNA. You know, it's you could say whatever you like about my music, my image, the act, whatever you could say, but you can never say that I didn't work hard for it. And it was not handed to me. Every post about whatever, like people is like, well, my favorite rumor about myself is that my parents were super wealthy and put millions of dollars into my career. That is false, ladies and gentlemen. They were middle class, working class people from upstate New York. Okay, where, the town that I came from, if you netted $300 a week in 1985 per mom and dad, you were living on Easy Street. Conversely, in 2005, okay, if you were netting $350 a week between mom and dad, you were living on Easy Street. The Utica, New York never saw the booms and it never saw the bust. It was just this weird place in the world that the economy, you never saw the economy's doing great. You never saw the economy, because it was always depressed, you look at that and then you go in terms of like, well, look at all the guitars he's got and blah, blah, blah. It's like everything that I've done, I've earned. Mm-hmm. And that I will argue with you to. Oh,
you're preaching to the converted here.
I know, but the people, there are people that say, it's like you don't deserve it or you don't do this and I don't do it. And everybody has a comment about how you handle success. It's just, but what we don't advertise, how about the $1 million in charitable contributions to different organizations and musicians during the pandemic?
I think you're an inspiration, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, but I think how you've done it, they should be doing courses at, music colleges about how you've done it, because it takes balls to do what you did as well. I mean, you've had to put your neck on the line several times to make this happen. Your own money, you're investing your own money. It's always, I say to people like, wanting you to invest in it, like, have you invested any of your own money? Because it's like, that's the big, that's the real truth at the end of the day, whether you believe in something. Will you invest in yourself?
Will you invest in and it's funny because we don't know any other way. Like, it's funny, like if we'll do a show for a promoter, like a festival, and it's like, what do you mean we don't have to promote this? We have to take out the billboards. You're like, oh, that's somebody else's job. And it's so rare that we even do that. But, for me, it mostly is, if I was to teach a course on the music business, I would name it self-belief. If you do not believe in those two things, meaning that I'm willing to do anything to believe in myself and just charge forward, then anything I can teach you about the music business is moot.
I think the one thing I'd add to that, I saw an interview with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and they were the interviewer for fun said to them, look, I want you to I've given you about a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to write one word that sums up why you're successful. So they both just wrote down the word, and they said, I want you to turn them around exactly at the same time. They both turned them around, and it was focus. They'd both written focus. And this is the thing, I think, what you've done is, there's the theory, then there's the execution. You have to be so focused and driven to make these kind of things happen. And then have the experience and the team and, the counsel of Roy and Kevin and, no man is an island. It's back to that teamwork. And then I would go back to sort of watching the film when I could see that maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, the changes, like when you were in Bloodline, that was frustrating for you. You were trying to run that band. I could see you, like you were saying, I'm a kid in an old man's body. And you were the only one really taking it seriously, whereas the rest of them were kind of, is having fun. And they were all sons of stars, weren't they, at the time?
They were all sons of stars. And the thing about Bloodline, we were all kids. I mean, they were kids. They were in their early 20s. I was 14. And when I still think that the time I spent in that band was a blessing, because I learned all of the pitfalls and the mistakes as a teenager in the music business versus being in my early 20s and making those mistakes. Because I think that would have fatally hurt my chances going forward. Because there's a lot of people that have been kicking around the music business and they made mistakes and they have regrets and they follow trends. It taught me, being in Bloodline taught me a couple of things. One, you have to have, self-destiny and guarantee of outcome, okay? And I said, I should learn how to sing so I don't have to deal with a singer that doesn't want to sing. today, you know, and guaranteed of outcomes. And, you know, and if you do your own thing, then it's your own ass on the line, you know, and what they don't tell you in music college is that when you are starting a solo career, especially in this genre of music, for years, you are better off being a player in your own band financially than you are being in your own band, because you have to pay for everything, and you have to get your head around that. And what I would say is every time you go to a concert and you have a backstage rider or something like that, we do it a little different. We have our own catering crew that we bring. But let's say you're playing a place and, you know, it's like, I require 1 bag of Doritos and I require 6 Diet Cokes or I will not perform, right? And then they put
the M&Ms.
And then and then they put 2 bags of Doritos and 12 Diet Cokes, and you're like, wow, that promoter's super nice, man. They're so generous. What a generous. You're paying for it.
Yeah, of course.
You're paying for it, and you're paying double for it. and when the record company takes you out to dinner, you go, oh my God, thank you guys. That was so nice. It was so nice of you. You're paying for that, but you're not only paying that dinner back. You're paying it back at a Shylock level. Mm-hmm. Meaning you're better off going to the Russian guys on Santa Monica Boulevard, taking out a loan.
It's like the worst interest you'll ever have to pay.
You're paying it back at 12% on the. And so those kind of contracts are set up to fail. Mm-hmm. You know, because ultimately people come out of those kind of deals going, well, I lost my brand, I lost this, I lost critical months and years of my career when I could have had something, and then the rebuilding comes back, and then the phones don't ring.
You worked with Little Steven as well, didn't you?
I did work with Little Steven, yeah.
And that must have been great at the time. He's a hero, but it wasn't quite what you wanted.
Yeah, we were all just trying to figure it out, you know, and you know, I was really an inexperienced singer, didn't know what I wanted to do, and it was one of the few times in my life where I lost focus on the lane. And I will say this, the lane is the most important thing. Like it or not, I have my own lane. It's the guy in a suit with the Les Paul, big guitar solos. That's the lane. And I built my own lane. And others have followed the lane or tried to jump in, and that's great. Every 10 years, there's somebody comes out and kind of changes the game in the blues. You know, I was the 2008, 2009 guy. Then 10 years later is Gary Clark Jr. And the next thing you know, everybody's got fuzz on the guitars and you know, a nice hat. You know, you're like, well, no, that's Gary's thing. You know. So you got to have your own lane. You know what I mean? It's like if you're going to follow trends, you're going to chase this shit your entire life and never get to where you want to be.
I go, sorry, just changing the subject because I'm remembering something Bernie said to me. You know, Bernie Mars is a good friend of both of ours, and he said to ask Joe about the Tommy Bolin guitar story.
Yeah.
So he said it's amazing. You got to ask about the Tommy Bolin guitar story because you obviously collect guitars.
I collect a lot of guitars.
Yeah.
So the greatest guitar safari, trademarked, of all time, in my life, was the story of Tommy Bolin's Les Paul, and it goes back to 2010. And we were playing, I want to say, Davenport, Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa. Not Davenport, Sioux City, Iowa. And my tour manager at the time said, hey, listen, Tommy Bolin's brother's coming tonight. He would love to meet. I was like, oh my God, Johnny Bolin, yeah.
Right.
A big fan, you know. I'm a huge Tommy Bolin fan. You know, his solo records, Lotus, and obviously the Spectrum record, which changed the game made jazz fusion not a bad word, right?
Yeah, I saw he actually played on Moxie as well. Do you remember the band Moxie?
Yeah, Zephyr and Moxie. Yeah. Deep Purple, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
Come Taste
He was always kind of a side guy in a way, though.
But he was only 25 when he died. I mean, he had this incredible career in like 4 years.
Anyway.
So he comes in and we're talking, and this guitar geek goes, where's the Les Paul? So Tommy had a 1960 Sunburst Les Paul, very valuable guitar with an added-on Bigsby and an American flag painted on the pickguard. And Johnny goes, man, I don't know. The last I heard of it, it was in Utah. Okay. So the trail goes cold until 2019. We get a call from a guy in Phoenix going, hey, is Joe interested in Tommy Bolin's Les Paul? I said, well, where is it? And he was being kind of secretive and stuff like that. And we had to kind of wade through it. And I said, fine. I don't deal with ghosts. I want to deal directly. So I finally got this guy, David Brown, on the phone. And he had this kind of older voice. And he's like, Joe, this is David Brown. And I said, David, where do you live? And he goes, I live in Moab, Utah. And I go, we have found our man. So I needed, like, this is like now becoming a CIA operation. So I said, I need proof of life. I said, send me today's newspaper, picture you and the guitar. I want to know that, because we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about almost a couple $100,000 US. So finally make a deal with him. This took about 3 months. Finally made headway. He needed to buy a new truck. What we didn't know is that David Brown's daughter lived about 5 minutes from a guy who's one of my best friends, but works for me. His name is Rick Gould. And we had no idea that they were that close. We could have just connected the dots. So Rick and his son go up to meet David in Moab. Still haven't seen the guitar in person. He shows up with his truck. At the police station, Rick's got a bag of cash and probably a pistol.
It's like an episode of The Sopranos.
And they do everything from a seance. They summon the spirit of Tommy. David asks for permission. Now, this is the thing. David was the owner of the guitar. Tommy never owned the guitar. This was a guitar that David loaned to Tommy because his Les Paul was stolen, and David was Tommy's guy. So when Tommy died in Miami in 1976, David just went back to Denver and ultimately up to Utah. So Rick finally sees this guitar. It's taking like 4, 5, 6 hours. I'm calling him because we have a gig that night in Oakland. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I don't hear from Rick. He goes, long story, it's getting weird. They drive 40 miles out into the desert. He shows them this spot. They sit on a cliff and they look at the guitar. Finally, Rick goes, I have to go. And David wasn't ready to give up the guitar just yet. So it took another couple of hours. Finally, he goes, okay, I'm ready to let it go. So they gives him money. Rick sends me a photo of the guitar in the desert, and he drives back to Oakland. Okay, great story. Now it has a tragic twist. This was in November of 2019. David Brown is killed in a car accident in January of 2020, okay? His last text to his daughter was, I buried the money in the desert.
Oh my God.
True story.
Over $200,000?
It was a little less than 200,000. we think it's somewhere between 125, 150, somewhere buried up in Moab, Utah. So you guys with metal detectors, get up there quick.
Joe, the grown-ups are telling us we got to wrap it up.
There's grown-ups up around here?
You got a show to do tonight. So listen,
yeah, man.
Thanks a million for everything and chatting with us. It was a real joy. And
no, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'll tell Bernie you'll be giving him a call when I go back.
Yeah, I got to give him a call.
And I'll send Pete your best as well. Yeah. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Brilliant.
Thank you, guys.